Understanding Karl Heisenberg starts with realizing he is a complete and utter narcissist. And this is obvious, and I will prove it to you as I go through all these clues. Hey, what's up guys, Tolerant Madman here with yet another understanding video where we're going to be breaking down a very large Resident Evil antagonist and seeing what really makes them tick, and possibly something that's actually the cause or causation for some of their certain ticks. Now the first clue is the most obvious and something that all players will notice, and that's that he hates Mother Miranda and has specified to be an unwilling participant in Mother Miranda's children. In the fandom wiki it reads, Heisenberg was one of the children who was kidnapped and subjugated to the Kadu parasite experiment by Mother Miranda, who brainwashed him into being her servant. Eventually, he, Alcina Domitrescu, Donna Beneventio, and Salvatore Moreau became Miranda's 4 lieutenants. For the rest of the clues, we need to completely understand the definition of narcissism, at least from a psychology standpoint, as being selfish, involving a sense of entitlement, a lack of empathy, and a need for admiration, as characterizing a personality type. The most prominent of these being a sense of entitlement, something he demonstrates through the entire game. While no one wants to be treated like a servant by the likes of Mother Miranda, he has a complete aversion to even the concept of treating the other lords as equals, which can be most seen in one of the first times we see Heisenberg after he captures us. This is on display many different times in the story, one such example being him telling Donna's doll Angie and Moreau to shut up. In more explicit terms, of course, because they were annoying him and talking over him while he was trying to speak. In this same scene, we see him stand up to Lady Domitrescu when she questions Mother Miranda's decision to give Ethan over to Heisenberg. The important thing to note with his crippling narcissism here is him using insults towards her supernatural height. As this is an attempt to bring her down to size, pun of course intended. Oh, keep growing, one day your head might fit your ego. While that initially seems as just a witty jab, I think that it's an attempt to undercut her and make him seem superior to her in his own mind. His body language during this conversation/argument is clearly arrogant, entitled, and having an inflated sense of self-worth. All of those being key signs that he is narcissistic, and that we will be able to get into even more of them when we go to the factory and deal with him there. Going into his powers a little bit before that, we can see why he has this inflated sense of self-worth, as even Miranda considers him to be the strongest of the 4 lords. With the only reason we defeat him is because he mutates himself, more than likely to do battle with Miranda. Because we didn't do any kind of damage to him like stabbing Lady Domitrescu to cause her to morph out of control, and that she needed to defeat. He did it to himself to increase his power, which inadvertently opened up a weakness. Had he stayed in his original form, it would have been far more difficult to defeat him. His powers, now we'll get into them. He has superhuman strength well beyond what any normal human could ever even attempt to get, with his hammer being stated to be too heavy for an ordinary human to wield. Heisenberg, meanwhile, carrying it in one arm seemingly with little effort, and even being seen shattering stones with this oversized weapon. That is already very clearly an enormous sign that the Kadu, he has very high affinity for the Kadu, and it has granted him a great amount of power. That isn't even going over his obviously and most important ability, his electromagnetic control, which allows him to move metal with his mind, which we've seen time and time again, say from the X-Men franchise, that is an intense power that allows him to do almost anything he wants with no one really being able to stand up to him if he used it accordingly or implemented it as such. It's less shown in the games, kind of more of just flashy here and there, and then used kind of as an explanation for his giant mutated form, but there was a lot more potential there that he could have used. The largest part of his narcissism as we see it is whenever he interacts with Ethan. As you go through the factory, and see how he treats Sturm as well, it's evident that he feels that he is playing God. That is shown throughout all of his clearly Nazi-tied experiments, German experiments on people, inhumane, very clear ties there, very clear parallels. He treats them subhuman, and he treats you subhuman as well. You're just a pawn in his game. He makes this very evident. And the way he treats Sturm is one of the only named test subjects that we see, is also very clearly how an abusive owner would treat their dog. And this is evident by him shouting at him for revving his propeller while Heisenberg is talking to us for the first time we meet him in the factory, as he's interrupting his thoughts. Then in the factory, he tries to explain to you why he hates Miranda, and while it is an understandable rage that we could all, of course, relate to, how much you'd hate someone who has done that to you, he uses a very specific word to describe it, one that I think gives us far more insight into his narcissism than he intended. She took us, to be her children. She locked us away in the village. Decades of being forced to serve her. Can you even understand that humiliation? He uses the word humiliation. That is where the narcissism is in full swing. He wasn't angry at how horrible it was, or what revenge for how immoral it was. But he was humiliated by being forced to serve someone else and being treated like a child. That, I think, is one of the biggest linchpins for all of this, that he is just an absolute narcissist. And that is his major defining character flaw. That is why Heisenberg talks to us like a child as well, undercutting those around him, even those who are on his own level, makes him feel more powerful. And he resents Miranda for having any form of control over him, especially why he acts like that towards us, because he's trying to display the same amount of control Miranda has over him over us, and is then angered whenever we do not allow so, and are thrown to Sturm for him to kill us. In conclusion, I do believe to understand one Karl Heisenberg, you have to understand your own sense of self-worth, and then understand that Heisenberg holds that above everything else in his own life. I hope you've enjoyed this little insight into Karl Heisenberg, and that you stay around and check out some of the other videos. I have one on Domitresk and her loyalty to her daughters, one on Donna Beneventio and how her powers are based in supernatural phenomenon whatsoever, and I have one on Salvatore Moreau, the False Lord, who I believe is just a complete joker, faker the entire time. But make sure you like and subscribe to the channel as well, and come back for the next week's video, which will be on, more than likely, Mother Miranda herself. So you don't want to miss that, and I will see you all next time. Have a great day.